The 1980 film, Zombie Holocaust, encapsulates in all its glory the violence, the gore, and the utter sleaze the Italian horror film was capable of at the time. With zombies, cannibals, and a nonsensical plot, this is the B-movie at its absurd best. I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this is the Italian Horror Guy podcast. So, I hadn't revisited this film for a number of years, and my God, I love how, with what would you say, the benefit of time, right? That in some ways, B movies just get better and worse at the same time. Like, this film is so much worse than I remembered it, but it's also just so much more fun. Right, like it's utterly ridiculous, and it's you know, as a result, this is going to be a much looser episode. To my pleasant surprise, I had forgotten that maybe it was a psychological thing that I just hadn't realised, or a subconscious thing. Collecting these 3 films into this little series that I'm going with was a pretty inadvertent thing. I've actually got this ultimate zombie collection from Umbrella Entertainment that has Zombie Flesh Eaters, Zombie Holocaust, and Burial Ground in it. So perhaps subconsciously that's why I knew to collect these films together into a series of podcasts. But I think also it makes sense because there's something very inadvertently, or maybe advertently, linked about these 3 films. Zombie Holocaust is clearly taking advantage of the success of Zombie Flesh Eaters. It even has some of the same settings, a couple of the same actors, and even some of the actual same footage that for some reason has just been lifted from Zombie Flesh Eaters and put into this film. It is exploitation cinema at its absolute finest. There feels a lot of the time like the plots are very poorly fleshed out, and to be honest, like they didn't believe in them. Like the Queen of the Cannibals angle that I'm sure we'll be getting onto as we go along. So, without further ado, I'll actually start discussing the film, and it's right off the bat, it's very clear that this is a B movie because whilst there's some really cool, I personally love but I'm biased because I love the theme music in pretty much all of these Italian horror films, but I personally love the absurd score that's playing. That it's almost this sort of, it's very cheaply produced, but like heartbeat sounding type music, but like just the very look of the font of the way, I can't even remember. I guess it says the Zombie Holocaust. I can't quite remember. But even the way it's written there, it just looks cheap. It looks trashy and B movie, and it's all read from memory. And nonetheless, I think it's a pretty cool thing. So what? The thing is, this movie feels like it's half committing to the idea of a plot that we care about. I guess I'll acknowledge that in a bit of a breakaway from the tradition of the normal cannibal film of the era, that they really do sort of ground the film within the sort of generic New York setting. I'd forgotten how long it actually takes them to go to the islands, the Indonesian islands or whatever they are. Like, they spend a lot of time with plot development in this film that frankly it just feels like it doesn't need, because no one really cares what's happening in the hospital. Like, we just want to get to the cool cannibal stuff, but I guess at the same time there is some cool cannibal stuff going on already, so that sort of quenches our appetite for a period of time. But so it's just an absolutely ridiculous and absurd plot. And but what I do like, and this is where it really comes directly into that B movie sort of vibe, is like, especially of the Italian persuasion, it's very much committing to the gore, right? How this movie wants to affect you and make you my apologies make you remember it is by coming up with images that sort of stick in your mind. And I think it must be said that the opening few sort of butchery scenes, shall we call them, are actually seriously uncomfortable to watch. The guy in the hat and coat who, walks into the hospital and just sort of finds himself a cadaver and just cuts off the hand. The length at which the film shows this scene is frankly, it's. I guess it's wanting to make you as uncomfortable as possible. I'll leave it at that. Sometimes I wonder with this film, if you actually cut out all the excess like that, there'd be about 6 minutes of actual film left. But nonetheless, this is the nature of exploitation cinema, right? It really wants to invade your mind a little bit, right? It wants to be uncomfortable. So as much as the sound effects don't overly match what's going on with the cutting, we'll put it this way, it doesn't sound like the noise I would expect of a hand being cut off a corpse, but nonetheless it's uncomfortable, and it does sort of feel like it's cutting through bone. And I also just love this idea that without any context, you can just start a movie with some man, cutting off a cadaver's hand and putting it in a suitcase, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is a legitimate story arc, right? Like, yeah, let's just throw the audience into this nonsense and see what they make of it." So he does the right thing and covers the corpse back up after he takes its hand away. So then we get some absolute cheesy bullshit B movie dialogue, and what is noteworthy about these early scenes is that some of the dubbing in this film is just absolutely appalling, right? Like more appalling than what we'd usually expect. It doesn't really match up. The voices just, they usually select voice actors that feel like they could legitimately have come from that actor. They don't even bother with that in this film. There's some doctor guy who's talking about, they're in anatomy class, and he opens up he does open up the cadaver, but he uncovers the cadaver, and then he notices that the hand's missing, and he sort of makes nothing of it. And then the nurse Laurie, I think her name is, I'm not totally convinced. I'm not convinced about her casting as a nurse, but we'll leave it at that. Mainly because I've seen the New York Ripper and it doesn't really fit to me. But Alexandra Dalicoli, I believe her name is. And then there's those absolute idiot students talking about stuff. Talking about, I think someone says something about needing a hand or something, and then they all giggle, and it's like, oh, it's the cringiest dialogue, right? But that just leads us into what we're going to see for the rest of the movie, I suppose. So one thing that the cannibal films of this era did, or at least right after Cannibal Holocaust made them popular, was they tried to run with the "I wonder who the real cannibals are" sort of inspiration, and just took it a little bit too far, really delving into the lameness. So both this movie and Cannibal Ferox, which I'm sure I'll be talking about in a future podcast, do this, except they try to overdo it. But in this in this case, like I just don't buy it. But they do it at the start of the movie. So the poorly dubbed doctor says something about. And it's such forced, nonsensical dialogue. After he's dismissed the students because they're giggling, and we can't have that in anatomy class. So he's talking sort of whispering-ish to Laurie about, I wouldn't expect to see this hand cut off in a civilized place. I'd expect to see that in a more primitive land, which is just setting her up to go, yes, but, are we really that different from the savages? And so, oh, for Christ's sake. Like, it's just such cringe-worthy nonsense. But I sort of love the attempted moralistic pontifications of a film like this that's like, what if we put cannibals and zombies in the same movie? Then people will come and see it, because we have morals, right? Let's just come up with the most disgusting, violent, unnecessary crap and call that movie Zombie Holocaust, and just have Alexandra Delacolle walking around naked a lot of the time for absolutely no reason. But this is all right. It's a moral film, right? It's about morals. And also, the very people that we're saying that we're not so very different to are depicted in the film later just eating people. Like, just, ripping their eyes straight out of their face, just eating their intestines that have just been spilled. We're not so different from those people, are we? Yeah, not at all. I don't see any difference whatsoever. So if you want to do it in like some kind of metaphorical way, that's all very well and good, but I'm not so convinced about the morality that Laurie is trying to impart on us in this particular scene. There's a few different scenes like this. At one point, they find a cadaver with the heart that's been removed, and there's like blood everywhere. And like, to be honest, this shot is actually really effective. But then the dub scream is, it's awful from that nurse who, for a start, the scream clearly, like the dubbing, this is maybe the worst dubbing I've ever seen. But on top of that, the scream itself is like, I don't know, it sounds like she's falling off a cliff or something. It's just really, really, really ordinary. But, yeah, sorry. There's a few different things like that. There's a bit of gaslighting that goes on of Laurie, like she's talking to some professor guy in a car, and he's all, and she's a bit concerned. He's all, it's probably a student initiation thing. Yes, I'm sure students who've studied like years and years of medical school and whatnot to get into this position, like, hey, you have to cut off a cadaver's hand, or else you're not going to be in the medical student club. Like, what an absolute wank. So then Laurie goes home and undresses, and she just sort of walks around for a while. And there's that real sleazy music. It's all do 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 do. And it's like, what is this? Like, what in the context of this movie? And I think I mentioned this last week with the Zombie Flesh Eaters podcast, where there's actually a bit of a disconnect in these films, because there's not really any sleaze or nudity or sex actually written into the plot of the film, but it's almost like it's a bit of an afterthought. And they're like, oh crap, people who are going to this movie in 1980 because the internet doesn't exist and porn magazines only get you so far, they are like, well, we need some nudity, but they don't sort of bother writing it into the script, so just completely out of place with everything else that's going on. Even the music in it is like, oh, well, let's have a lengthy scene of her very slowly undressing in different parts of her apartment for no particular reason. And so it's like the expectation of the audience is, well, we're going to get nudity and we're going to get gore. The problem with this film is they sort of mix the two together at times. That really makes you very uncomfortable with the nudity, because she's sort of walking around. She opens her fridge in her apartment, and there's like this music cue that's like when it zooms into, I don't know, some kind of meat in her fridge. I don't think they ever establish if this is like from, maybe I'm wrong, if it's like some kind of a body part or something, or it's just meat that's in her fridge. But she doesn't react to it. Like, I don't think she notices it because there's the knock on the door from the annoying friggin' reporter who eventually gets scalped later, and good because she's annoying, so she deserves it. But like, this whole thing's just really, like, if the idea is that we're meant to be enjoying Alexandra Deli-Colli being naked, it's very hard to enjoy it while there's like gore happening everywhere, and this happens a little bit later in the film as well. So it's like, what exactly was the audience expectation with this stuff? Because usually I think it's probably best to separate the nudity and the gore, but evidently Marino Girolami didn't agree with me. So, I'll just get her name. The woman, I think it's Susan. Is it Susan? Just give me a second, good people. Yes, Susan barges into her apartment. She's with the New York. They come up with some nonsense, like the New York something. It's not a real paper, I don't think. And she's all just trying to find information out about the goings on at the hospital. And she's a very rude woman. And, you know, she talks to Laurie about all the stuff that she's gone on her world, because not only is Laurie like a hot nurse, she's also an anthropologist. Because why not, right? And that sort of explains later why, you know, she's got such just natural interest in going to the mulattas or whatever they're called. You know, she asks about some knife that's hanging on the wall. It's a ceremonial knife for human sacrifice. Oh, okay. Fair enough. But she's trying to get this person out of her apartment, and she's made very clear that she is an annoying reporter and is clearly going to put anything in the paper. So I don't know why she would give her this stuff to report. But anyway, a lot of the actions and motivations of the characters in this film are, well, hard to explain a lot of the time. So there's some quote about all primitive peoples practicing cannibalism. Yeah, I think this was... That's right. So she ends up with Ian McCulloch, who's just reprised his role from Zombie Flesh Eaters. He's called Peter Chandler in this particular film, and he's I think he's like a police investigator in this one. Like, he was a reporter in the previous one, so he's had a bit of a promotion, but he effectively plays the exact same role. And then there's the other guy, George, who's one of the more redundant characters of all time, right? George sort of goes around saying, giving us plot information, then eventually gets eaten by cannibals not that long into the movie. But so there's George, and then of course his girlfriend is the reporter Susan. Like, oh no, now we're going to have to deal with her. What a shame. And they're giving us generic information about you know, cannibalism and primitive peoples and all this kind of nonsense that no one really cares about, but they pretend. But the movie has to have some kind of justification for why they're going to this island, so they do it. It's probably worth mentioning at this point. It's like, I think films that just don't pretend, and this is pretty much all these little cannibal films that don't pretend that there's really a sort of through line in the plot and just send the people to the damn island, right? Like, I'm sorry, but this story about the stupid symbol that Laurie keeps seeing and stuff is like, okay, who cares, right? Because we're not watching the film to uncover some kind of surprise. It's like, oh, this man has a tattoo on his chest. And then it's like the revelation at the end of the film that obviously I'll get to, that it is what it is like, okay, all right. There's never any explanation as to why Laurie is the queen of the cannibals, I don't think. Or I mean, it's probably to do with the fact that she lived this first 7 years of her life in Indonesia, which I'm not convinced of. But, yeah, nothing in this film is explained particularly well. Considering how much time they spend actually trying to explain things, it's rather remarkable. I hope it's not coming across as I'm being too critical, because I know I'm just absolutely monstering this film. But I think this is the great thing about the B movie, right? They're everything about them is bad, but the whole package is marvelous, terrible, ridiculous, awful, and you judge yourself for watching it, but it is still a great experience. So, and I didn't actually make mention. I just went out of order a little bit there. That there's that scene where they in the hospital, there's all these white people who are nurses and doctors, and black people who are nurses and doctors, and fit very much into the generic New York vibe. And there's also this other guy who seems to look sort of Indonesian, right? And is acting really suspiciously at every opportunity. And like, we know that the film, because we've seen cannibal movies before, we know that the film's going to one of these islands, and this guy never talks. And then it's like, oh, it was him who was doing it. Oh, what a shock. And then the doctor's all, oh, I can't believe it. It's like, oh, for God's sake. So they catch him like with a heart in his hand, just ripped out of a human's chest and about to eat it. And then he like jumps out of the building to his death. Because of course he does. Because as we know, if you're the kind of person who just eats the uncooked hearts out of recently deceased human beings, you're also the kind of person that doesn't want to get caught. Geez, I don't want to go to jail, man. So he jumps to his untimely death. It's worth saying that this shot is actually quite effective. Like, not necessarily the last bit, because it's clearly like a dummy that they throw on the ground, but it's actually one of the more effectively constructed scenes in the film, although that's probably not saying much. They use the word anthropophagus, which is an all cannibal, apparently. So that's a film. There's a film called Anthropophagus that one day I will talk about. That should be even more fun than this one. And then they sort of talk in vague terms about stuff, and then Laurie goes back to her apartment after she's met the annoying people, and there she finds that there's stuff taken from her apartment, and then she hears a knock at the door, and she's all damsel, and thankfully big strong Peter Chandler is here to take care of her, and she's like, there's someone in the apartment, and he comes into the apartment and looks around a door and goes, well, there's no one here now. Like, yeah, mate, you checked the entire apartment, did you? But just his very presence, right, has kept her alive, because we know how defenseless the women in these films tends to be. But that's one of its charms, right? That's why we watch it. So, so when they eventually get to where the action is, and I feel like we're about like half an hour, 20-30 minutes into the film by this point, and there are these scenes, and I find this so bloody strange that they do this. They're driving in a van to along this island to where Dr. Obrero is, or Dr. Butcher, as it was. This film was recast as Dr. Butcher MD in 1982 by the Americans, according to Wikipedia. So that's fun. But what I find so bizarre is the use of stock footage in this film. So the stock footage is from zombie flesh eaters, but for a start, this film is based in like Indonesian islands, and the zombie flesh eaters is, I believe, based in the Dominican Republic. So they use images from that film for no reason, and it's so odd because the setting, whilst it's similar, is obviously different, but also the sort of camera quality is slightly different. So it's jarring, and you can see that it's a bit off. But I don't really know how to explain this. And also, you can see in the shot from Zombie Flesh Eaters, you can see Oretta Gay's hair in the car, and she's not in this film, and we know that. So what we can see are the 4 people from Zombie Flesh Eaters in the car, but only Ian McCulloch is in this film. So, but it's like, what I don't understand is that there's actually quite lengthy scenes shot of the outside of the van in this movie, and the inside of it. I don't understand why they needed to fill in the footage with an image from a different film. I don't know why they didn't just shoot more of this van, right? And it's only a few seconds. So I don't know, were they running short on footage when they cobbled it all together or something? It's so strange, but it's one of these, it's a glorious quirk, actually, of these films. But unfortunately, the 3 guys in that car, they don't get credited for being in the movie, do they? But they are. So we eventually go. We go and see Dr. Obrero, and he. To be perfectly honest, this scene is about the only moment in the film that actually feels like a film. Mainly because this guy, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, was a fairly experienced actor. He's in a couple of other things that I've seen, and he's quite reputable. So, what is it? Donald O'Brien was his name, or I believe it's Donald O'Brien. As much as pretty much all the dialogue in this film is rather cheesy, and this stuff probably is too, because this person is sort of presented as like an expert or whatever, it feels genuine. Okay, put it this way. He's the only person in the movie that feels like he was cast properly for his role. Like, he looks and feels like some kind of doctor or some kind of scientist. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And so Dakar is there. Dakar is the guy who was hanging around Richard Johnson in Zombie Flesh Eaters, and he's just so obviously dodgy. I love this idea that, like, I mean, I think this film was partially made with like leftover budget or something from Zombie Flesh Eaters, and the fact that Dakar is in this film, it almost feels like they left over some of the actors. Like, oh, do you want to be in this as well? I know that's not what it is, but it's that he's reprised almost the exact same role. He barely speaks, and he wasn't a very well-known actor, put it that way. I think he was also a wrestler, which I can sort of see. But it's like he's just sort of there, and it's like he's in this because he was in Zombie Flesh Eaters, and it's like this movie is doing its best to remind you of Zombie Flesh Eaters. It's like, you're enjoying this film, you liked Zombie Flesh Eaters, look, here's some stock footage from Zombie Flesh Eaters to remind you. Here's an actor from Zombie Flesh Eaters. Here's a setting that we're burning down that was also from Zombie Flesh Eaters. And by we're burning down, I think they just used the burning down footage from Zombie Flesh Eaters and put it in this. So there's a lot of stuff that's left over. But I mean, this is you know, the filone, or the cycle, right, that the Italians loved. Like, well, bugger it, it's zombies are big right now, so let's make a zombie film. And it doesn't matter how bad it is, because we can cobble a trailer together and say, if you like Zombie Flesh Eaters or if you like Dawn of the Dead, then you'll love this absolute garbage. But it's in the genre. It's exploitation cinema, right? So there is no necessary standard by which the standard of quality that the film has to have. So, getting into some of the specifics about the conversation that they have with Obrero. And I'm speculating slightly here, but I'm going to allow myself permission to do so. Now, as I said, the pontifications about are we really any better than the cannibals and the savages? That's like the completely undeveloped and unjustified moral compass of the film, right? And as the film goes on, we understand eventually the villain is Dr. Obrero, which means we associate his positions with villainy. So he actually offers an opposing opinion on that. They're talking about wanting to go. I think the point of the mission, it's probably worth mentioning, is that they're there to get photographs of savages and stuff. And it's feels a little bit like you're asking for trouble. We've all seen cannibal movies before. This isn't going to go well, but whatever. So when he's talking about, they show no interest in civilization. So we sort of automatically associate. Eventually, we associate his opinions with bad, but it's but they don't. He's right. So as the film goes on, when they stumble across the cannibals in the forest, they're pretty unforgiving. It would be fair to say. So what are we to make of that? Because I know how these films work. Cannibal Holocaust, like it or hate it, commits its entirety to the idea of us being the real cannibals. Now, I think the overall message is lame-ish, but I still no, it's interesting, but it's not really correct if you actually look at the actions of the cannibals in the film. Saying that we're worse than them is not correct. But that film, you can link it to the Vietnam War and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm doing an episode on Cannibal Holocaust next week with my brother for the Horror Film Science podcast, so do tune into that. But put it this way, it earns the right to put its little moral things out there. But this and Cannibal Ferox don't. Because this and Cannibal Ferox are made because cannibals are cool right now. And in order to sort of justify the nonsense of the film, they have to pretend that there's some kind of moral compass. But they make the moral compass exactly the same as Cannibal Holocaust. They just don't actually flesh it out or justify it in any way. So it's yes, Alexandra Delicolli, I wonder if we are just as bad. Maybe we're no better than the primitives. Yeah, maybe, except based on the actions of the primitives in this particular film, it would probably suggest that maybe you are. Especially when the people who get murdered by them in this film, they're idiots and stuff, but they're just there to take pictures, right? They're not really doing anything bad. Anyway. So now we get to the second Laurie naked scene of the three, and this is probably the most uncomfortable one, even more uncomfortable than the meat in the fridge thing. So she's walking around. She's just had a shower, and she's in the house that seems to be made out of bamboo or something, Obrero's house, in her room. And she puts on just a shirt, and she's going to get into the bed, but then there's a head with maggots crawling through it. It's partly it's disgusting. So again, we see her naked, and because we're at a grindhouse in 1980, oh yeah, here's some nudity. This is what we came here for. And then that happens, and you're well, I don't want to deal with this now. And then rather because she screams, and it's terrifying. And then Peter Chandler, and as in Peter and Dr. Abrero come rushing into the room, and Peter just sort of looks like, oh, sorry, is it Peter? I think I've conflated him with Peter West. Oh, that's right. He's called Peter in both films. Okay. So he's Peter Chandler in this one, Peter West in Zombie Flesh Eaters. But he sort of looks like of mild concern. Like, oh, that's not good. Like, he gives the look that you would give if you'd walked in and there was a maggot in her bed, not a head with maggots on it. It's just like, okay, so you've just been talking about how you want to go and take pictures and see the cannibals and whatever, and now you've seen this and you've said, no, they're fine, it'll be fine. And now you've seen this and you're like, oh, well, I guess we'll just go and deal with them anyway, right? Like, what the hell? It's some of the dumbest stuff. It's also rather hilarious that throughout this scene, she's just wearing a shirt and nothing else. But, you know, the whole thing is just rather ridiculous. So, they then go to they get on the boat. Well, no, they do. That's right. It's again, like, so much are they in awe of zombie flesh eaters that they even copy things like getting onto a boat, as if that was some kind of iconic scene from zombie flesh eaters. So they get on the boat, and then they're on it, and there's this music in the background that's like, what am I watching? I feel like I'm watching some kind of like documentary. All of a sudden the music's all and it's like, what the, I don't really know what's going on here. And then like it's interesting because Susan and Laurie never actually established that they don't hate each other, but like there's never a scene establishing that after their meeting at Laurie's house in New York. But suddenly they're like best of buds, and Susan's all like, oh, what do you think the island's going to be like and stuff. Like, just this, well, I don't know, it's probably going to look like an island, right? Like this nonsense dialogue. I don't know, seriously, who the hell wrote this movie? Like, but see, it's funny because if you mix like stupid boat scene with nice music, by the way, but nonsensical in the context of this movie. So ridiculous music. Why are they on why are we seeing this boat scene? And very bad dubbing. It just makes for like, the whole mixture is like, okay, I've got no idea what this movie is right now, right? But that's probably the case really for the most of the film. Pretty much everything that's happening is like inexplicable. So Laurie says she doesn't know what it's going to be like, which makes sense because they're not on it yet. Yeah, so when they get to the island, and can I just say, a lesser known Ruggero Deodato film, obviously of Cannibal Holocaust fame, Jungle Holocaust, which is a great film, right? I actually think this is what should have made the Cannibal film famous, although The Man from the Deep River is also great, but that was before the cycle really kicked in. But so the setting in this scene is very much reminds me of where the plane lands in Jungle Holocaust, but you know, make of that what you will. So there's who is there? There's the four main characters. There's Peter and George and Laurie and Susan, and then there's these two like locals who are, I don't know if they're Abrero's guides, but they're just sort of, I suspect they're not. They're some kind of guide, but they are like, they're really scared and stuff. And, well, maybe there was three. Anyway, someone goes missing, and I think we hear like a scream. And yeah, I think there were three. So one of them goes missing, we hear a scream, and then Peter in this film is just like so indifferent to bad things happening. Like he's well, we won't find him now. We'll if he doesn't show up, we'll just have to wait till morning. It's like, he might be dead, Peter. And this logic of we're not going to be able to see anything in the dark. Like, okay, but based on what I'm looking at, I can see into the forest, right? So can't they carry their torches and stuff? Like, I can see what I'm seeing on the screen. Like, just the indifference to bad things happening in this film from the characters is, it becomes rather comical as it goes on, to be honest. So the next morning they go and look for him, and it doesn't take very long, and they see him absolutely mutilated. Like, he's had parts of his body eaten, his intestines are all on display. But again, from an inexplicable perspective, why did they do this? Like, if the film is saying that they're cannibals, which it clearly is, it's in the title. In fact, no, it's not. Zombie Holocaust. Yeah, close enough. Yes, it's an effective shot for us to see this mutilated body, but haven't they just found food? Like, why did they partially eat him and then leave him there? Because the way they eat George in a few minutes suggests to me that they're quite happy to eat the entirety of the of people. So anyway, it makes for a really effective shot. It is actually, almost without fail, what these films do is depict gore very well. And it's not necessarily that it looks realistic, although I don't know exactly what realistic looks like in that situation, but it always looks like something you don't want to look at. Because whatever stuff they use, intestines, they're not pleasant, right? So we see this, and then again, like, Peter and George just don't seem to really care. Now, on the one hand, they don't seem to care that this guy's been butchered and partly eaten. But on the other hand, they don't even seem to care about the implications that this has for them and their friends. It's like there are people around who are eating people, and you're just like, oh, well, whatever. So the two remaining locals are upset, and I think they Dakar translates to the white people that they're scared. They're acting very scared, and it takes his translation to say that they're scared. So here are these two little blokes who are obviously scared, and their friend has just been partially eaten. They're actually scared. Like, that's what they are. They're scared because their friend just got eaten. Thanks for translating that for us, Dakar. Your role in the movie is very necessary. Although, as it becomes clear later, he actually was double crossing them. If it wasn't made clear enough on the boat when he was doing those dodgy eyes and the camera zoomed right in on his face. So they're scared, and then one of them runs off. This is such a cannibal movie thing. Someone runs off in a panic. In fact, this is just a horror movie thing. Someone runs off in a panic, and then they're clearly going to die. So he runs off, and then he trips some kind of trap thing, and then a lot of there are a lot of spikes in him, and it's really sad because we have no idea about him whatsoever. And he's dead now, so that's unfortunate. Actually, it's worth mentioning that before this happens, George is just like, "All right, bury him." So, just bury him. We've got to go. Have a little bit of empathy, dude. They've just lost their friend, and his intestines are on display. Just bury him. Don't worry about it. And again, maybe George gets his comeuppance to some extent, right? And boy, does he get his comeuppance. So, where are we? there is that moment. I can't remember which one it is. Either it was the first guy that got eaten, or maybe it was the second one, or maybe it was even the third one. I can't remember when he gets eaten. But there's that really over the top scene where like Susan is like leaning down taking photos of it, and it's like it's obvious, like, oh, you know, it's all about the story, and, you know, again, they're trying to make some kind of moral thing, but it's like the movie's just completely unconvincing, so you don't really care. And then George is like, oh, have some respect, that person just died. And she's like, I'm a reporter. And he's like, oh, that's all you care about, isn't it? The story. It's like, oh my God. It's just absolutely embarrassing. But especially coming from George, who he's shown absolute indifference to the dead as well. You might as well get a story out of it if you're not going to care, right? But, you know, I guess it's some kind of commentary on the lack of stability in George and Susan's relationship, which is a very important aspect of this movie, obviously. Yeah, so the next day they're out again. In fact, yeah. So back at the camp that night, I think, or at least one of the nights, there's one of the, like, this cannibal sort of sneaks into the tent, and then Laurie like machetes its head. That's a pretty good shot, actually. That's a really, really good shot. It's not clear why there's a lone cannibal, because they do seem to hunt in packs. But, you know, that happens. It provides a really cool scene. So anyway, the next day they're out. I don't know if I've confused whether they actually spend 2 nights in the camp, but, you know, let's be honest, it really doesn't matter. So they're wandering around the woods again, and they see a cannibal, and then they see another cannibal, and then they see a group of cannibals. And at first they were like, oh, fascinating. And it's like, guys, you know that they just killed and ate people recently. Like, what exactly do you think this meeting is going to be? And then Susan's trying to take pictures and stuff, and then eventually George is like, oh, I don't like their numbers or something. So he points the gun at them, and then Peter, tells him to stop that. And, you know, eventually they get attacked, and there's chaos, and people are running away and stuff, and they eventually catch George, and I think they like stab the crap out of him, and then they just start eating him before he's dead. Like, they're eating his intestines and he's still screaming. What is this? And then, like, one of the cannibals, like, puts his fingers into each eye of George and just rips the eyes out like they're jelly and eats that. And, like, that shot of him is like quite, I mean, you know, they obviously didn't do it to the real actor, but it's quite obviously like some kind of prop of his head and stuff. But I must say it still looks pretty effective, and I think it's the same effect as before. Like, I don't know what that actually looks like, but I know what they're showing me is uncomfortable and hard to look at. So Susan gets carried off, you know, which is sort of strange now that I think about it, because does she get... Yeah, I'm pretty sure she gets carried off by cannibals, right? But isn't it meant to be the zombies that are on Dr. Abrero's side? Like, So why did the cannibals know to carry her to him? I don't... Yeah. Anyway, probably doesn't really matter. So, you know, they've had their way with George, and they're about to kill Peter, and then we get this then the zombies show up, and they're all and there's this lengthy scene of them doing this, and for some reason the cannibals are really scared of them. It's not really made to clear why, and they move ridiculously slowly, and they don't seem to have any intentions, right? They're just sort of there to be scary, you know. And it's really like echoey and unjustifiably loud. So, you know, as much as they're presented as this sinister new thing, you know, it's a bit like the Balrog in the Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm sure Zombie Holocaust can appreciate that comparison, that as much as the Balrog is terrifying like these zombies are, the goblins were going to kill them all because there was like thousands of them. So, you know, as much as these new zombies represent some kind of new devilry, as Sean Bean might say, the fact is they've just saved them from immediately being eaten, right? So that's okay. Somewhere in all of this, I think it might have been the night before, Dr. Abrero had, you know, directed them to where he's going to be or something, and it's all dodgy. But, you know, whatever, I suppose. So, then I think the movie loses the plot a little bit. if it had any plot to lose, and it probably didn't. So, and by loses the plot, I mean it starts attempting to map things out for us in an interesting way. So, Dakar and I guess I haven't bothered learning Dakar's actual name in the movie. Is Mulatto. So Mulatto and Laurie and Peter find where Dr. Abrero said he was going to meet them. And he's all, oh, you better get back, and I'll meet you in a couple of days, right? Or a day or whatever. Because he's got stuff here to do. Like, oh, how are we going to do that? Oh, there's a little dinghy. Oh, there's a dinghy, is there? That's awfully convenient. So he saw it. It's like, how did you know there was a dinghy there? It's like, oh, he saw it. He saw it on his way over or something. So then we have all this nonsense. So why do we care? So Peter, not only is Peter protective, but he's also smart. Whereas Laurie needs protecting and is an idiot. So even though she's like an anthropologist and a doctor, she's also an idiot, which really a naked idiot for a lot of the movie, and it really doesn't really gel sensically, but you know what does. So they make their way to the shore where the dinghy is, and Peter's on, yes, just like Abrero said, and he's already onto something, but Laurie is at least smart enough to realise that Peter is onto something, just not that, you know, she has any idea what it is. So he starts to be like, oh, how did Abrero know that we were on this island? Because of course they'd landed in theory on the wrong island, so he's made a revelation. And then, of course, the dinghy doesn't work, just as Peter might have suspected. And then a zombie tries to kill them, and Peter kills the zombie. And then they decide to go back and sort the situation out with Abrera, and they see Susan's hair on a zombie. And I don't know. There's a part of me that, now it doesn't have much competition, but there's a part of me that this is like, probably thinks this is the best moment of the film, because there's something so like off about it, as if what has been happening isn't already off. But like it's clearly her hair, and they recognize it as her hair, and they're like excited, oh, Susan, and then, you know, they go to see her, and it's clear that it's not her. It's you know, she's been scalped. I hope I'm using the term scalped correctly. It's not a very pleasant thing, is it? And it's been put on this zombie who looks at them, and that revelation is just really cool, even though I think you probably, as a viewer, probably know that it's the case. But I think this is a really effective moment of horror. One, because she's been scalped, and two, because it shows not just this movie, not just horrible things in the movie, but the horrible intent of the people within it, right? Like, there's perversion happening that is also within the film. It's not just that there are cannibals and stuff, but someone has, I guess, someone is doing something that is consciously awful. So then we cut to now we see Susan all bald and bleeding and stuff, and this scene is almost good, but it isn't. So, but again, you know, I have spent that like nearly an hour now crapping all over this film, but please don't be left with the impression I don't love it. There's something. This moment fails because everything that's happening in this film is already horrific and hard to watch and all of the things. So this scene is attempting to ground the evil in something more. This is the "are we any better than the savages" moment, right? The problem is, and I know what they were going for, obviously, like they were going for an indifference from Obrero to what he's doing, or not even an indifference, but like a higher God sort of aim, right? The problem is that I think because we've already seen so many horrific things, that as much as it's awful to see Susan, who we don't really like that much anyway, but it is still awful to see Susan in this state, it's not really... it's not any worse than anything we've already seen. And in many cases, it's significantly better. Because, oh, well, you know, you're not in a great situation, Susan, but some of your... I mean, George got his intestines eaten while he was still alive, you know? So it's like, it's not that easy to feel sorry for it. And then because of the sort of methodical way that Obrero is doing stuff, it just takes away from a little bit. I think it slows it down a little bit too much. So he's going on about putting her brain into that of a dead male and stuff, and, you know, she's screaming, and then he, like, you know, he puts that thing on her mouth and apparently just removes her vocal cords with tweezers. Like they're just hanging there and you can just take them out. And he's like, removed vocal cord in his little recording thing. So, all right. So she can't scream anymore, which is good because it would be very upsetting to his work. You know, he drills... No, he doesn't drill. He saws off the top of her skull and just lifts it off, revealing her brain, I think. I mean, it would. Not that she's, you know, that intelligent, but I mean, let's be honest, it's horrific, isn't it? This is awful. What is this? What's happening in this film? And then at this point, finally the other two, Laurie and Peter, have finally got back, and they're like wandering around trying to be quiet, and they're seeing all these bodies that are hanging that presumably, you know, Abrera is going to use for his experiments and stuff. See, I guess what a comment on here is like, there's enough in this film from a theoretical point of view that could actually make this really, really worthwhile. The problem is there's too many different things they're going for, right? There's a zombie angle, there's a cannibal angle, there's a mad scientist angle, there's a queen of the cannibals angle, and the problem is the movie's only 84 minutes long. You've probably got 4 different movie ideas in that. Not that they'd all be good, but they'd at least be a movie. And this is like, it's just throwing all these darts at the board, and like it doesn't really make sense. Or, you know, just the whole thing's a bit off. So I must say, I think there must be things that were cut out or at least never shot when they filmed it or something, because, well, I'll get to that in a moment. They eventually, Peter and Laurie get caught because bloody stupid Laurie screams because she sees a zombie and they hear her. So they go and catch them, but Laurie like escapes, and then Peter is put on a bed, and he's told by Abrera that he's going to be experimented on now as well. And like, you know, I tried so hard to keep you away from here, and blah blah blah. It's like, and it is actually sort of a great line, and it's delivered really well. How he's going to put his brain into a younger man, and he's like, so you'll know what it's like to pass from life to death and death to life. So it's pretty cool, I think. The problem is that the movie doesn't earn this, right? It doesn't earn this cool idea because it's barely explored it. We've only been introduced to what the hell he's doing about 5 minutes earlier. So, like, there were too many grand ideas that were barely fleshed out at all in this movie, and it ends up just being a bit of a lame, goofy mess with lots of cool gore. So while he's going on about that, he's telling Peter what he's going to do to him, and how he, you know, nothing can get in the way of his research and his science and his discoveries and stuff. How he's going to, you know, he's going to make extend life or lifespans or whatever. Then it cuts to Laurie, who is now naked again, and she's being painted for some reason by the cannibals. Now, I believe that there's a version, or there's a title for this film called Queen of the Cannibals. Now, that in and of itself would actually make what is happening here a little bit more explicable. The problem is that it's completely inexplicable. So earlier in the film, she's got that little stupid symbol, which is like an oval with a cross on it. And she has it and it gets stolen. And then the cannibal, or the bloke that jumps out of the window, he's got it tattooed on his chest. And then someone else in some footage that she shows during the police investigation, that she is shown during the police investigation, they have it on their chest. And rather hilariously, an actual police investigator didn't see it, even though it's very obvious. And she's like, "Oh, that's that symbol." And then, you know, they're walking her and they're playing these drum things, and it's all very slow motion and really, really voyeuristic. And like, well, we've got Alexandra Deli-Collis, so she might as well be naked for 107% of this movie. So she's walking, and they put her on this oval stone, and it's got a cross in it. It's like, that's what that oval symbol was. It was her lying naked on an oval. It's like, on a stone oval. And it's like, okay, what are we meant to do with this? Like, okay, who cares? This isn't a revelation. right? It's just stupidity. And I don't know. I assume there's some kind of like mythology behind it. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to assume that. I assume there is mythology relating to cannibalism and such. I'm not convinced that this is any real mythology, but it doesn't really matter whether it is or not. And it gets up onto the stone, and she lies there, and one of the cannibals is about to gut her, and then the stone moves. And it's like, oh. So this is obviously the revelation that she's the queen of the cannibals, right? If she lies on the stone and it moves into place, then... And they're all going, I don't know what they're saying. And this happens for ages. And so, is the audience meant to go, oh, wow, Laurie's the queen of the cannibals? And it's like this victorious moment and the cannibals are all happy? So what the fuck? What are we doing? What is this moment? So then we go back to Peter, and he, in an excruciatingly long scene, is like cutting the leather straps from his hand with like his thumb with a little scalpel. To be fair, I really don't know how Peter manages this, but again, I don't really know much that's going on in this film. He breaks loose, and he stabs Dakar in the neck, which is good, because he's a double-crossing person. We don't like him. And there's a pretty not a bad shot. Like, he stabs him in the middle of the neck with the scalpel, and the way the blood comes is pretty cool. So he dies, and Obrero's really annoyed. And then he, like, I think he sets some zombies on him or something, and then eventually, like, some cannibals start coming in the window. Like, all right, and they eat a zombie, and then they grab Obrero, and they very slowly eat him. I don't mind the very slow demise of Obrero here. Like, he's sort of fighting, get off me, and then eventually they successfully detain him and I suppose start eating him. But, like, it's so unclear what's happening. It's not unclear what's happening, but it's so unclear the motives of everyone and the mechanics of all this. So, here's my best guess. Laurie, as the queen of the cannibals, is able to instruct the cannibals to go and save her friend or something. Like, presumably she can get them to do her bidding now, but then eventually the building catches on fire, and like Laurie and Peter, I can't remember which one's like, oh, let's go, and they sort of go out the door, but it's like they're sneaking out. But a couple of seconds after they sneak out, one of the cannibals seems to, like, oh, we better rush. Like, obviously doesn't say that, but like it feels like they suddenly need to leave. I don't know if it's because of the fire or because they've noticed them go. Either way, it's like you needed an extra 15 minutes in this film to just flesh out some of the basic logistics of what's going on here. So, Obrero gets eaten. Laurie and Peter escape, and they look at the building as if they've got some kind of emotional attachment to it, which they don't. But Susan dies in all this somehow, I think. Who cares? She's probably burning, whatever. And the cannibals are gone, and then we get that cool doco music again as it's the building's burning, and then the credits come, and you're like, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, there's all this nonsense in it, but in all seriousness, even some of the most ridiculous films, as in bad horror movies, they at least make internal sense, right? But I just wonder if they, because as I said, it's only 84 minutes, and a lot of that is like just drawn out gore. So there's barely an hour worth of plot in this movie, is what I'm saying, in all seriousness. I feel like they just didn't have any money and couldn't shoot everything they were trying to shoot or something. Because there has to be a scene in between Laurie leaving and then just being the queen of the cannibals all of a sudden. Or should I say, why are they testing whether she's the queen of the cannibals? If that's what they're doing. Because they steal her and they put her on the stone, but they're ready to, like, gut her. So, I don't know. That's my analysis of Zombie Holocaust. Go see it. It's wonderful. So, what I'll be doing now, not now. I have mentioned the blog. I just want to make the point. There's a lot going on. I'm trying to move house and get a job in a different place and all kinds of wonderful stuff. And I have 5 different podcasts as well. So there's a lot of stuff that is happening that's sort of preventing me from getting decent blog posts together. My probable aim at this point is I think I'm going to do a blog post across the 3-week period of these 3 films and do a more epic one. And I was reading a book last night, Reading is Good, Guys, and I got the idea that actually if you put enough blog posts together over the course of time and they're on topic enough, you can quite quickly have the foundations of a book. So I think I'm going to be putting my blog posts together once I get everything more organised and properly on schedule. I'm getting there to write with the aim of collaborating everything together. So do indeed keep following the podcast. When there is a post on the blog, I will let you all know. Or when there is a second post on the blog, I'll let you all know. Go out and see Zombie Holocaust. It's fantastic. Next week, part 3 of the Ultimate Zombie Collection, not only from Umbrella Entertainment but from myself, will be Burial Ground by, I believe, Andrea Bianchi, whoever that is. Burial Ground is, I would say, every bit as ridiculous as Zombie Holocaust, but is better. There's smart zombies. These are probably some of the smartest zombies that have ever existed. They're like raptors in Jurassic Park, right? They hunt in packs. I'm very much looking forward to watching this. So talking about it, I should say, I've watched it many times. I've never been able to work out exactly what it is I like so much about it. Hopefully, next week I will work that out. Nonetheless, do join me for that. I look forward to posting that episode and recording it. I also, as I mentioned, will be in about 4 or 5 days' time, I'll be recording with my brother an episode of the horror film / science podcast about Cannibal Holocaust. And that is, if Alexandra Delle is the queen of the cannibals, then Cannibal Holocaust is the king of the cannibals. And do join me for that episode. It'll be a lot of fun. Thanks very much for listening to this one, guys. Join me next week.